Chapter 23:19. Xingu Clan. The woman brought Yi Xian to a martial arts practice field. This practice field was nearly 10,000 feet long and wide, and there was no one around. The woman turned to look at Yi Xian. "You are now in the divine profound realm, right?" Yi Xian nodded. The woman nodded slightly. "You need to reach the profound opening realm." Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. "Do you know the mystery of the profound opening realm?" Yi Xian shook his head. Actually, he knew that with the deity he could reach any realm, and naturally he could reach the profound opening realm. However, he still wanted this woman to explain in detail. Maybe there would be a different harvest. Previously, the reason why he did not use the deity to directly reach the profound opening realm was because his intuition told him that even if he used the deity to reach the profound opening realm, he would not be able to do anything to this woman. Moreover, once he used the deity to increase his realm, the consumption was too terrifying. It could be said that when he used the deity to increase his realm, it was the time to play with his life. But now it was not the time to play with his life yet. He could wait and see for now. The woman said, "Sit." Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. The woman also sat down and then said, "Profound opening is the Tao of seeing through fate." As her voice fell, she gently waved her right hand, and suddenly strange red lines appeared all around. The woman looked at Yi Xian. "Fate lines." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Fate lines." The woman nodded. "These are the fate lines of all living beings." Yi Xian asked, "Can it be changed?" The woman nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Yes?" The woman nodded slightly. "However, it can only change life and death." As she said that, she opened her palm and a flower appeared in her hand. She looked at Yi Xian. "This flower, if no one interferes, it will continue to grow, but if I make a move, it will wither and disappear now." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, "Then how do you know that when you kill it, that's the fate it deserves?" A hint of admiration flashed in the woman's eyes. "You are indeed very outstanding. You are right. Perhaps the fate that I changed its fate is the fate that it originally should have. And this involves another level. In other words, demigod realm." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Above profound insight is demigod, and above demigod is ancient god?" The woman nodded. Yi Xian was a little curious. "What realm are you in now?" The woman said, "Demigod." "Demigod." Yi Xian was silent. Was he a little too arrogant when he was facing the statue of the ancient god? Meanwhile, the woman continued, "As the name implies, the grotto profundity allows the tracks of destiny to become material. Most importantly, you can cultivate your own energy of destiny." As she spoke, she opened her palm and a surge of power suddenly appeared in her hand. "Patriarch, the universe we are in now is almost certain to be the universe with the highest civilization in the known universe. How could there be a universe with a higher civilization?" The woman glanced at the old man. "You are too narrow-minded." The old man was speechless. The woman looked down at Yi Xian, and her expression was complicated. Because she had gone out and seen the vastness of the outside world, she had never thought that the Xingu clan was very powerful. The old man hesitated for a moment and then he said, "Patriarch, if he really is from a universe with a higher civilization, then why did you bring him back?" The woman's expression was calm. "Let him compete with that person from the Imperial Wilderness Divine Clan. If he wins, it would naturally be great, but if he loses, he will die at the hands of the Imperial Wilderness Divine Clan. At that time, the forces behind him will definitely come into conflict with the Imperial Wilderness Divine Clan. At that time, my Xingu clan will be able to reap the benefits." The old man bowed slightly and said in admiration, "This plan is brilliant." The woman said, "During this month, whatever he needs, we can satisfy him." Saying this, she turned around and left. The old man glanced down at Yi Xian and he fell silent. On the square, Yi Xian had already recovered from the see-through realm to the profound understanding realm. Yi Xian couldn't help but sigh. This deity was really a bit of a cheat. After he used the deity's great Tao to reach the see-through realm, he first familiarized himself with the see-through realm, and then he controlled his own power of destiny. When he recovered to the profound understanding realm, he could easily reach the see-through realm without relying on the deity. However, the demand on the universe veins was too great. From the profound understanding realm to the see-through realm, he spent a total of 30 million universe veins. 30 million. Even he felt his heart ache. And he was also a bit on the verge of collapse. Why did it take him so much to go from the profound understanding realm to the see-through realm? And Xiao Fan and the others only needed 5 or 6 million universe veins. Could it be because he was too fast? One had to know that Xiao Fan and the others had been at the divine perception realm for a long time, and he had just reached the divine perception realm not long ago. No matter what, he had to think of a way to get money now. Moreover, after reaching the see-through realm, it didn't mean that he was really at the see-through realm. After all, he relied on Dedeabi to advance, so he needed to settle down and consolidate his realm. And now Yi Xian was consolidating his realm. And consolidating his realm also required the consumption of universe veins. Seeing that the universe veins in his storage ring were decreasing, he began to worry. He had to think of a way to earn more universe veins. Besides consolidating his realm, he was also constantly cultivating his sword Dao. And the cultivation of the sword Dao was not as easy as cultivating his realm. The cultivation of the sword Dao was the cultivation of the heart, the settlement of the heart, the breakthrough of the heart, and this was definitely not something that could be achieved by meditating and comprehending. It couldn't be rushed. Yi Xian was also trying hard to slow down and not be impatient. Cultivation knew no time, and day after day passed. On this day, Yi Xian, who was cultivating, suddenly opened his eyes. Not far in front of him stood a young man. The young man was wearing a tight black robe, and he had an imposing appearance. There was a sense of majesty between his brows. Yi Xian asked, "What's the matter?" The young man's expression was calm. "Let's spar." Yi Xian shook his head. The young man frowned slightly. "So cowardly?" Hearing this, Yi Xian also frowned. "You really want to fight?" The young man was expressionless. "How can it be fake?" Yi Xian nodded. "Let's make a bet, it'll be more interesting. What do you think?" The young man looked at Yi Xian. "Okay. Tell me, how do you want to bet?" Yi Xian opened his palm and a storage ring appeared in his hand. "I have all my universe veins and I still have 30 million. I'll bet 30 million universe veins." Hearing this, the young man was stunned. 30 million universe veins? The young man's expression suddenly became somewhat ugly. How could he take out 30 million universe veins? In the entire Xingu clan, probably only the clan leader could take out 30 million universe veins. Damn. Is this guy so generous? Yi Xian suddenly said, "Can't afford to play?" The young man glanced at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian spoke indifferently, "If you're poor, then don't come out and fight." As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. The young man fell silent for a moment before he said, "I don't have that many universe veins. Let's play smaller?" Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at the young man. "How many do you have?" The young man hesitated for a moment and said, 3 million. Yi Xian was furious. "You only have 3 million, yet you dare to challenge me? Are you trying to insult me?" The young man was speechless. Yi Xian said, "That's too little. I won't fight." The young man said angrily, "It's just a spar. Is there a need for you to do this?" Yi Xian's expression was calm. "Isn't sparring a waste of time? Perhaps time is nothing to you, but it's extremely precious to me." The young man was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, "How about this? You go and gather 10 million universe veins." The young man gazed at Yi Xian. "Are you that confident?" Yi Xian replied with a question. "Are you that lacking in confidence?" The young man gazed at Yi Xian for a short while before he said, "Just you wait." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. It didn't take long for the young man to return. He opened his palm and a spatial ring appeared in his hand. There were exactly 10 million universe veins within the spatial ring. At this moment, there were many Xingu clan experts in the surroundings. Some were from the older generation and some were from the younger generation. There were a few hundred of them. The young man gazed at Yi Xian. "Can we fight now?" Yi Xian shook his head. The young man frowned slightly. "What do you want to do now?" Yi Xian smiled. "Wait." As he spoke, he suddenly took out a table and said, "Everyone, I'm going to fight your Xingu clan geniuses. Are you interested in making a bet? If you bet that I'll win, the odds will be 1-2. If you bet that your Xingu clan geniuses will win, the odds will be 1-10. As he spoke, he said seriously, "This is a good opportunity to get rich. All of you must seize this opportunity. Everyone." Chapter 23-22. The Training Grounds. It didn't take long for a few hundred people to gather at the training grounds. All of them were members of the younger generation of the Xingu clan. On the other hand, Yi Xian sat on a stone platform in front of them, and he was reading an ancient book with great interest. Gu Exang gazed silently at Yi Xian from below. On the other side, the patriarch of the Xingu clan was watching Yi Xian from the shadows as well. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly put down the book in his hand, and then he glanced at the crowd below and said, "Is everyone here?" As soon as he finished speaking, a man suddenly ran over hastily. Yi Xian gazed at the man. The man's expression instantly changed and he spoke with a trembling voice. I was delayed. A sword suddenly pierced through the center of the man's forehead, and then it nailed him to the ground. It hadn't killed him, just nailed him to the ground. The expressions of all the experts of the Xingu clan changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. That was too bloody. However, no one dared to say a word, because they knew that this fellow before them wasn't just ordinarily ruthless, and he really dared to kill. Suddenly, all of them turned around and saw a woman in a white dress running over from not too far away. She seemed to be around 17 or 18 years of age and she seemed delicate and weak. Her face instantly turned ghastly pale when she arrived below the arena and saw the man who was nailed to the ground. The woman gazed at Yi Xian and spoke with a trembling voice. I was delayed. Yi Xian grinned. Don't be nervous. It's very normal for you to be delayed. Find a place to sit. All of them froze on the spot when they heard this. What's going on? The woman instantly heaved a sigh of relief when she heard Yi Xian, and then she hurriedly bowed deeply before she ran over to the side and sat down. The man who was nailed to the ground had disbelief written all over his face. No. What? I'll be nailed if I'm late, but she'll be fine if she's late? What? Yi Xian glanced at the man who was nailed to the ground and spoke indifferently. She's a beauty. The man's expression froze on his face. Everyone? Yi Xian looked at the pinned man. Are you not satisfied? The man hesitated for a moment before he said, I have a little. Just as he finished speaking, another sword suddenly pierced through his right shoulder. Boom. The man's body split open and blood splattered everywhere. Everyone? Yi Xian looked at the man. Do you have any other questions? The man gulped. If you're going to play like this, then I have no problem. Everyone? Yi Xian nodded. Then let's continue the lesson. Today I will talk to everyone about reality. Reality? Everyone looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian glanced at the crowd. Do you know what reality is? Chapter 23-24. Stop. Yi Xian suddenly stood up with a solemn expression. The woman was given a fright, and her clothes that had already been untied slid down. Of course there were still clothes underneath. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Put on your clothes? The woman hesitated for a moment before saying, No. Yi Xian was speechless. The woman wanted to continue delaying, but a strand of sword intent locked onto her. The woman raised her head to look at Yi Xian and said with a trembling voice, You? Yi Xian waved his sleeve and the woman's clothes were all put on. In the next moment the woman was blasted out of the door. Outside the door, the woman was stunned. Yi Xian looked at the woman outside with a cold expression. Am I very easy to talk to? Hearing this, the woman was shocked and hurriedly shook her head. Yi Xian looked at the woman coldly. If a woman doesn't have self-respect, how can others respect her? I don't care what your reasons are, but I hate your behavior. Every time you encounter trouble, you sell yourself and use your body to exchange for benefits. He shook his head slightly. I don't want to say anything too hurtful, but do you think that your behavior is appropriate? The woman lowered her head slightly. Yi Xian suddenly asked, What do you want to exchange with me? The woman fell silent. But Yi Xian suddenly shouted. His voice was like thunder and it was terrifying. The woman's heart shook and she hurriedly said, Cultivation resources. Yi Xian frowned slightly. For cultivation resources? The woman nodded and said with a trembling voice, Yes. At this moment some people rushed over. Seeing this, the woman's face instantly turned pale. If others found out about this, she would lose all face. At this moment Yi Xian waved his sleeve. Boom. A strand of sword intent surged out, and in an instant the people who rushed over were blasted back. Seeing this, the woman looked up at Yi Xian with a dazed expression. Yi Xian looked at the woman and did not speak. The woman said with a trembling voice, You look down on me, right? Yi Xian shook his head. No, I'm just angry. When he found out that this woman wanted to use her body to exchange for resources, he did not look down on her. Instead he felt more anger and sorrow. How difficult would it be for a nobody without a backer to change his fate? When the normal path couldn't satisfy them, many people would try to take the crooked path. Most of the time, the crooked path was always easier than the right path, especially for women. If they made the wrong choice, money might not be that hard to earn for them. He didn't want to criticize these people, but this was wrong. Being poor was not a reason for you to make mistakes. Because once you took a wrong step, every step you took would be wrong, and then you would step into the bottomless abyss. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Do you want to study? The woman was stunned. Read books? Yi Xian nodded. Chapter 23-28. How could one change the human world and the universe if they didn't experience the sufferings of the mortal world? When he heard this, Yi Xian's heart was suddenly moved. Indeed, as he'd said before, if one wanted to change the world, one had to first enter the human world and experience the sufferings of the mortal world. Otherwise, how could one change the world? After entering the academy, Yi Xian realized that the students of the academy did everything themselves. Although they weren't weak, none of them used their own abilities to make things easier for themselves. Doing everything themselves? When Xiao started to light a fire and cook, he really was cooking. When Xiao looked at Yi Xian and smiled. The pavilion master said that the high and mighty immortals are unable to change the universe because they don't know the thoughts and needs of the people at the bottom. So, the students of the academy must go to the human world and experience the lives of those at the bottom. Only by knowing their sufferings and difficulties can we change them. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Indeed. When Xiao pointed at a straw hut in the distance. Young Master Yi, that straw hut contains all the ancient books collected by the Wuxia Academy. If you like, you can go in and take a look. Of course you can't take it away. Yi Xian smiled. Is it open to everyone? When Xiao smiled. These ancient books are open to everyone. Of course, those cultivation methods and divine abilities are not open to the public. As he spoke, he shook his head. Actually, in my opinion, the ancient books in that hut are more important than those cultivation methods and divine abilities. Cultivation usually cultivates the heart, and reading is the best way to calm the heart and improve one's thinking. But many people tend to overlook this point and think that reading is useless. Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm going to read. As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and walked towards the straw hut. Guhan was silent for a moment before he stood up and followed. When Xiao glanced at Yi Xian in the distance and remained silent. After entering the straw hut, Yi Xian noticed that the interior of the straw hut was a huge square. The square was filled with ancient books and there were at least a few million of them. Yi Xian was instantly excited when he saw this. Obviously, these should have been collected by Qin Guan. In the following period of time, Yi Xian began to crazily read books. In fact, it was much easier for a cultivator to read books compared to an ordinary person. This was because a cultivator's memory was very heaven-defying. It was completely possible for them to have a photographic memory. However, many cultivators would not spend their time on things like reading books. After all, after stepping onto the path of cultivation, everyone's goal was either immortality or invincibility. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. Chapter 23-35. The green-clothed man shook his head with a smile when he saw the excitement on Yi Xian's face. At this moment he suddenly realized that this fellow was still like a child. Of course he felt even more guilty and ashamed. He really had neglected Yi Xian earlier. It wasn't wrong to leave him alone, but it shouldn't be done completely. Father and son still needed to communicate. Leaving him alone was equivalent to letting the little fellow walk the same path he had once taken, and he knew very well what it felt like to not have a father. As if he'd thought of something, the green-clothed man turned to look at Shen Tian. Shen Tian's face was pale and he'd lost all will to resist. How could he resist? This green-clothed man killed ancient god realm experts like he was slaughtering chickens, so how could he resist? Shen Tian hesitated for a moment and said, "Can I surrender?" In the end, he didn't choose to be stubborn. Stubbornness was tantamount to death. He didn't want to die right now, and perhaps he would have a chance to live if he surrendered. The green-clothed man grinned, and then he turned to look at Yi Xian. "You decide." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Shen Tian, do you want to live?" Shen Tian immediately bowed deeply. "Please spare my life, young Master Yi." Dignity? Backbone? Living was the best. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "What do I get from sparing your life?" Shen Tian was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, wait a moment." As he spoke, he took out a transmission talisman and crushed it. It didn't take long for an old man at the ancient god realm to appear here, and he hurriedly brought a spatial ring over to Shen Tian. Shen Tian took the spatial ring, and then he took out another spatial ring and passed both of them respectfully to Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at the spatial rings, and there were a total of 80 million universe veins within them. Besides that, there were some divine treasures. Shen Tian said respectfully, "Young Master Yi, all the treasures of my profound god world are in here." Yi Xian put the spatial rings away and grinned, "All right." Xian Tian hesitated for a moment and said, "Young Master Yi, are you really not going to kill me?" Yi Xian nodded, "No." Xian Tian was puzzled. "Why?" Yi Xian asked, "Do you want me to kill you?" Xian Tian quickly said, "Of course not." As he spoke, he quickly bowed deeply, "Thank you, young Master Yi, for sparing my life." Yi Xian glanced at Xian Tian and smiled. He naturally had his reasons for not killing Xian Tian. If he kept him alive, he would have more opportunities to act tough in the future. Revenge? He wasn't afraid at all. After seeing his father's terrifying strength, if the other party still wanted to take revenge, then he could only give him a thumbs up. Even if Tian Yi was reborn, he wouldn't do such a stupid thing.